It's 8:29 right now. You are listening to Daybreak. My name is Jamie Martinson.
And I'm Brian Noonan. We go from hamburgers to ranked voting and open primaries next on the Civic Media Network.
All facts, no fiction. It's Daybreak with Brian and Jamie.
It's 8:35 right now. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today on the Civic Media Network. Brian, I got to say, I'm super excited for this next conversation.
I am too, and it's something that in doing research, yes, I said it again, twice in one show, Jamie, it's obvious that I'm doing a lot of research.
Rubbing off on you.
I love it too because I did a lot of research on this topic yesterday, and I don't understand why it's not a thing. Because listen, everybody agrees, I think, that our political system is broken. But the question is it really broken, or is it just functioning the way it was designed to function? If you've ever looked down at your ballot and you held your nose and you're like, oh, I got to pick between the lesser of two evils, you might have thought that there's got to be a better way. Well, 5 states do think that, and they found the answer. It's open primaries and ranked voting. Now, could it work here in Wisconsin and across the country? Tracy Hunter from Voters First Wisconsin is here to talk about it. Tracy, thanks for being here. We appreciate the time. And again, it's an amazing concept. But before we get started, briefly, what is Voters First Wisconsin? What do you guys do?
Yes, thanks for having me, by the way. I'm excited to let people know more about this Final Five voting concept. Yeah, Voters First Wisconsin is a Wisconsin-based organization, all volunteer, nonprofit, cross-partisan, bipartisan. We don't have any political leaning, and our goal is to create better election systems, actually to change things, not just to promote civics. So we have 3 different things we're working on. Today we're going to be talking about Final Five voting. We're also involved in the money in politics, which I heard your show yesterday. Thanks for that. And then also fair maps. We're doing a lot with fair maps.
So Brian alluded to the phrase, Washington isn't broken, it's working exactly as it was designed. So explain that to us, and what does that mean? Because he alluded to sometimes you just vote for the candidates that you have to because it's a lesser of two evils. But is that actually the purpose of our elections? Because we want to, obviously we'll get into how we make them better, but explain that phrase to us.
Sure. The problem that Final Five voting is trying to address it has to do with how we do our primaries. And when primaries were introduced, it was actually for a good reason back during the progressive era. The 2 major parties have found out how to kind of use that to their advantage. And at this point, they have used the primaries, created a primary system that's a duopoly. It's a monopoly times 2, right? They get to guarantee that they're the only ones that ever have a chance of winning. I can explain, how that works. Take about 60 seconds at some point.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah,
Let's
go for it.
Yeah, so let's talk about how the current system works. So today we have a primary election either in the spring or the summer, and the parties run those, and then we have a general election in the fall. In the primary election, the parties exert a great deal of control over who gets nominated. They get to direct the money. They get to direct the dark money. They get to direct, who they nominate, and they almost always get their way. Also, in primaries, only 10% of the voters, the eligible voters across the country, actually vote in primaries. So that's a very small segment that are picking the winners of the primaries, and they tend to be more partisan. We all probably vote in primaries. That's a good thing, but they tend to be more partisan. And then what happens? Then we usually get 2 candidates picked by the parties, and they advance to the general election. And that's when most people show up, 2/3, usually in presidential elections. And often we look at the ballots for president or Congress or whatever, and it's, like you say, the lesser of two evils. And we say none of the above. And we say, why is the system broke? Well, they're controlling it to make sure that their very partisan candidates make it to the general election. And one more thing. If you talk about the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives, 5 out of 6 districts across the country are guaranteed to be won by one party or the other. Not necessarily due to gerrymandering, but just due to demographics. It's either going to be a blue or a red. So whoever wins the primary in that party is guaranteed victory. So 10% of the voters plus the dark money and the party leadership are picking, 85% of the Congress, and that's why the number of bills they're getting done is going. It used to be around 700 or 800 50 years ago. Last year there were less than 100.
Now, when did primaries become a weapon, too? Because we never used to hear about primaried use as a verb, but now, now we do, and that's another part of the issue. One is they're using it as an attack, and two, if you're an independent, you don't get to vote in primaries because you have to pick a side for your ballot if you were to go vote, which is another lesser of two evils things. If I want to vote in the primary and I'm an independent, I have to go in and either pick a Republican or a Democrat.
Yes, and I don't know when the idea of primarying an existing candidate to make sure that they don't get reelected came in, but it's been used for a while and it's been used a lot lately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the the other thing I wanted to highlight was both for candidates running for office, they know what they have to do in order to get elected, who they have to satisfy. It's that 10%
That
plus the money.
10%. Yeah.
If they make it in office, especially in Congress, they only have 2 years before the next election. They're really starting their reelection campaign immediately. And they know who they have to please to get
Yeah.
reelected. So it makes total sense that they don't really care that much about their constituents because they don't need their constituents. They just need those others.
Yeah, those 10%.
Yep.
A majority of the states, and first of all, we're talking with Tracy Hunter from the from Voters First Wisconsin, votersfirstwi.org. A majority of states right now have those closed primaries. Speaking of the independent voters, but there's only a handful of states right now that use fully open primaries. So how does that compare to what you're proposing with Final Five voting, Tracy?
Yeah, that's an important distinction. So let me explain how Final Five voting works.
Yes.
So it does have an open primaries concept, but that's not really what makes it effective. Um, it also has a ranking component, but that isn't the same as ranked choice voting necessarily. It's just something that we use. So the way that Final Five voting works is there are two changes we would make to how we do elections. We would change the primary and we would change the general election. In the primary, we would no longer have a column for each party. Everybody would be on one single column, and all voters would get to pick one candidate, just like today. And it would be completely open. You don't have to designate, that you're leaning left, leaning right, leaning independent, or green, or whatever. Everybody gets to pick one. Here's the important thing: 5 candidates advance to the general election, not 2, 5. And you may very well get 2 from Team Red and 2 from Team Blue and independent. But they all move on. So now you have a competition in the general election for the best ideas. In fact, you have people from the same party competing for ideas. They don't just get to win because their party picked them. The other half then is what happens in the general election. Now we have 5. There's no more guarantee that every party is going to be represented there. It's really the 5 most popular primary winners, and they have to compete all the way through the general election, and the voters use a ranking system there. So there's 5 there, and they get to pick their first choice, second, third, fourth, fifth. You don't have to vote for 5, but it's to your advantage to do that. And in order to win in the general election, you need a majority. That's huge, because you know that whoever wins is favored by most people. So if somebody wins in the first round, great, we have our winner. If not, let's suppose somebody only got 40% and the rest were split up. Then what happens is the lowest vote getter candidate is removed, and their second place votes, everybody that voted for that candidate that was removed, now we take their second choice. So their vote is still alive. It gets added to the other 4, and we look again, do we have a winner? And you keep doing that until you have a majority winner.
Okay. And what if it gets down to, can there be a tie? I mean, I guess there could be between the final 2. What would happen in that case?
It depends how the law is written, but that wouldn't be any different than what we have today. Because conceptually, today we could have, a tie
Sure.
with.
So would
the
it be
left
an
and the right.
instant runoff, or would we have to do another full election? Because some places that are trying this are doing instant runoffs, which seem to make a little more sense, a little more cost effective.
Right. Another important question. It would be an instant runoff, and so it would be calculated. It would take seconds of processing, and it's auditable at every step. If you're going to try and game this somehow in the software, sometimes you hear that criticism.
Sure.
It would have audit steps all the way through, and it would be audited, but it would be instantaneous. All of the voting systems, the tabulation machines in Wisconsin have the ability to support this ranking mechanism. They may have to do a software upgrade, but the software is available.
So there's a lot of people who argue that this would actually change how candidates campaign. And we've mentioned the dark money in politics. We've seen money flow into the state of Wisconsin. And in Alaska, who adopted a similar system back in 2022, even though they use the top four model, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Everything else is the same now.
Yep. We saw a lot more in Alaska, more door-to-door outreach, broader messaging. So why does this system encourage more of that grassroots effort than what we currently have with TV and social media and all of that?
Right. So in order to win, you need broad support. You can no longer just get that 10% plus the money. So that means you have to appeal to people across the spectrum. And in order to do that, you have to be going door to door. You have to be doing more local campaigning. Today, like in my district, they don't even campaign. It's almost scary.
We're having some technical issues.
So it
with
opens up access to these candidates so that they have.
Are we going to lose Tracy here?
I think we might be losing Tracy. But I know one of the other things that, see if
I'm back.
Oh, there we go.
Tracy's
we got
back.
him.
All
Okay,
right.
good.
So you're talking about getting out and campaigning. It also affects negative because we all complain about the negative ads. Oh, all we see is negative ads. That changes too when you have this because, as you mentioned, you may have two candidates who are Republican, two are Democrats, then you throw in an independent. You can't attack everybody.
Right. So the question, is this going to help with the money in politics problem? We think it should. It's too early to tell. We don't have the data yet that supports that, but common sense would say, like you just brought up, if you're a big donor, today all you have to do is throw it into one pot. Now you have to spread it around. So number one, you may not be as excited about spreading it around if it's not effective. And number two, there's going to be less money going to those candidates, more visibility. And if you support both from the same party, they're going to be competing with each other. So, that may be cut both ways for the money you donated.
I want to take a look back at Alaska because we were talking about that a little bit before the technical issues. And since they adopted a system similar to this, because this is kind of a test case, right? Alaska is. Have we seen signs that elected officials are working across the party lines more because of the way that they are voting in their elections?
Right. This is one of the most exciting things about the Alaska story. So one of the first things they did was they formed a bipartisan ruling coalition. So the way it works in every other state is whatever party's in control, they set the agenda for the whole session, right? They control everything. In Alaska, this Final Four system they have there encouraged so much cooperation that the extremists on both sides didn't want to participate. So what they did is they formed a coalition in the middle from both parties, and they set the agenda. And this is true both in their assembly and in their Senate. They've had huge success there. They did election reform last year. Who's doing election reform, right? They had a balanced budget. They had a huge number of women that were encouraged to run and win. And in fact, their state Senate has more females than males for the first time. The indigenous people there, which is a huge percentage of their population, feels much more represented. It looks like a win across the board.
So much so, Tracy, that after the election, there was a lawsuit that tried to ban it. It went to a referendum, and the citizens of Alaska went, "Nah, we like how this worked." And so they passed it, and so it stands. Tracy Hunter is with us. He's from Voters First Wisconsin. If you want to learn about Final Five voting, which sounds like a great idea to me, go to votersfirstwi.org, votersfirstwi.org, and learn about it. Because once you start learning about it, it makes a lot of sense. Tracy, thanks for being here. Have a great weekend. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Jamie and Brian.
It's like voting, actually working for the people. Crazy concept. 8:48 right now. You are listening to Daybreak. I am Jamie Martinson.
And I'm Brian Noonan on the